You've heard it a million times, right? Just go with the flow. It's kind of become our default advice for stress, like a little permission slip to just chill out. But what if that simple, comfortable idea is actually a massive misreading of a philosophy that isn't just deep, but is genuinely dangerous? What if the real truth here isn't about relaxing at all, but about a radical challenge to our very idea of who we are? Let's get into the dangerous truth of Wu Wei. So this is the version of Wu Wei we all know. You see it on posters, you read it in self-help books, and it feels good, you know? It sounds so serene, so effortless, a life without all that friction. It's a really appealing promise, for sure. But here's the thing. This popular, bite-sized version, it barely even scratches the surface of what's really going on. And when I say dangerous, I don't mean physically dangerous. I mean dangerous to the one thing we spend almost every waking moment building up and protecting: our ego. The real philosophy here isn't some friendly pat on the back telling you to take it easy. No, it's a direct, profound threat to the very foundation of who you think you are. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the myth of go with the flow. Because before we can get to the real heart of Wu Wei, we've got to clear away all the stuff that it's not. We have to deconstruct this popular, easy to digest idea of effortless living. This common translation basically turns Wu Wei into a fancy word for apathy. You know, just sit back, let things happen, don't really do anything. But the ancient Taoist masters weren't talking about being lazy, not even close. They were talking about a state of peak effectiveness that comes from a place, well, that most of us are honestly pretty afraid to go to. And that whole journey, it starts with a concept that is famously, almost impossibly difficult to define: the Tao. You can think of Wu Wei as the action, but the Tao, well, the Tao is the entire universe it happens in. Without getting a feel for the Tao, Wu Wei is just an empty phrase. The Tao isn't some kind of God watching over us. Probably the best way to wrap your head around it is to think of it like the source code for reality. It's the natural, spontaneous process that everything in existence follows. It's the pattern behind a swirling galaxy, a growing tree, and yeah, even our own lives. Now, what's so wild about this is the immediate paradox. The foundational text of Taoism, the Tao Te Ching, literally kicks off by telling us that the very second you try to put the Tao into words, you've already missed the point. It's not something you explain, it's something you feel. There's this beautiful metaphor from the philosopher Zhuangzi. He says to picture the Tao as this great unseen wind that's just blowing through everything. And all the things in the world, you, me, our thoughts, our problems, we're just the different sounds that the wind makes as it passes through different openings. See, we aren't the source of the music. We're just the instrument that the Tao is playing. Okay, so if the Tao is this natural, effortless cosmic flow, then where does all of our stress, our anxiety, and our exhaustion come from? Well, it comes from that constant, grinding conflict between that natural flow and our own personal will. And this right here, this captures that core conflict perfectly. Look at the left side. That's basically our default setting, isn't it? Trying to force outcomes, trying to control people, imposing our rigid plans onto a reality that is completely fluid. But then you look at the right side, that's Wu Wei. It's about riding the wave, not resisting it. It's acting with incredible skill, but without the strain of a tense, grasping ego trying to drive everything. Lao Tzu's favorite metaphor for this, and it's a brilliant one, was water. I mean, think about it. Water is soft, it yields, but over time it can carve through the hardest stone. It never fights, it just flows around obstacles, always finding the path of least resistance. And by doing that, it gets everywhere it needs to go without ever getting into a fight. That right there is the essence of effortless action. So here's the crucial takeaway. Life's challenges, the waves, they aren't actually the main source of our pain. Our suffering comes from our desperate, rigid fight against the waves. It's the friction we create by trying to be an immovable rock in the middle of a flowing river. And this is where the philosophy gets truly dangerous. Because if Lao Tzu introduced this idea gently, The philosopher Zhuangzi took it to its absolute most radical conclusion. As our source material puts it, Zhuangzi was a little bit rougher. Just let that one sink in for a second. The ideal person has no fixed identity. Now, think about our modern world. Everything we do is about building and cementing an identity. Our job title, our political affiliation, our personal brand. Zhuangzi is saying that the truly enlightened person, the one actually living in the Tao, has none of that. So you see, this is not a life hack to make your to-do list more efficient. This is a call for a kind of spiritual demolition. The goal isn't just to get more done with less effort. The goal is to completely dissolve the I that is so desperately trying to get things done in the first place. Zhuangzi basically said our ego is built on these rigid ideas. We cling so tightly to our notions of what's right versus what's wrong, what's good versus what's bad. He said by letting go of these opposites, we stop being this single fixed point arguing with the world, and we become the center, the axis around which all possibilities can just turn, without any friction. Now, let's be clear, this is not about becoming a nihilist who believes in nothing. It's an attack on the arrogance of certainty. It's about recognizing that our desperate, deep-seated need to be right is the very thing that disconnects us from the way things actually are. So, what on earth does any of this ancient radical philosophy have to do with our lives today? Well, as it turns out, it speaks directly to the very heart of why so many of us feel so discontented all the time. See if this sounds at all familiar, that feeling of burnout? That is the tyranny of will in action. It's the exhaustion created by forcing your ego's rigid story. I have to get that promotion. I must succeed at this specific thing, onto the natural, unpredictable flow of your own life. That isn't a career path. That's just fighting a wave, day in and day out. Or, hey, think about our relationships. So much of our anxiety comes from trying to make our partners, our friends, our family fit into some perfect preconceived box of who they should be. This attachment to our right way of how things are supposed to be, it's a direct rejection of the Tao, which is always flowing, always changing. And really, it all just boils down to this. That feeling of the daily grind is the feeling of your ego trying to micromanage reality. It's that constant, low-level exhaustion that comes from resisting what is in favor of what your ego is screaming should be. And so that's the truly uncomfortable question that Wu Wei leaves us with. The promotion you didn't get, the argument you had, the traffic jam? What if none of that is the real problem? What if your real fundamental struggle isn't actually with life at all, but with the self you are trying so desperately, so exhaustingly to protect? It's a dangerous thought, but it might just be the only way through.